Good morning, this is Mrs. Heisenmittel, and today I am going to be showing you how to assemble your pegboard toy. You're going to be using the directions right here that I've already given you, and I'm just basically going to show you how it works. So the very first step says, first off, step 4 is the assembly. So it says, in a new IAM or assembly file, place your board. So an assembly file, you'll notice here I click on the English because we're doing this in inches, and it's a standard IAM in inches. That's what the IN inside the parentheses means. I hit create, and you're going to notice you just get this blank canvas. That's fine. You see up here in the corner, and when you open it, it might say place from content center. Place from content center only works if you've set up a content center. So it doesn't tend to, when you click on that, it doesn't work because I haven't set you up a content center. So instead, if it says that, you just click on the little arrow and click on the straight plain place. And then it says, what do you want to place? So for me, I'm going to go out to my U drive, and I'm going to select my pegboard toy file. And you can see I've already done one here. But there's my basic pegboard, and I'm going to open and click just once, and then I'm going to pull off, right click OK, because I really only want to place one of them. Now here's a trick. Come over here to the browser, open your pegboard toy, and right click on it and make sure that your pegboard board is grounded. So you're going to select grounded. That means you can't move it, so I can't drag it around. This is going to help you later because when you place your sides and all your pegs, you need one of those parts to be grounded so it doesn't like rotate funny or end up in a funky place. So usually grounding the board will save you a lot of time, trouble, and effort. So I'm going to go back to place because now I also need my end. So I'm going to place that right there, place, place. And I'm placing them generally, right click OK, where I want them to go. Not perfect, but notice I'm zooming back out so I can place them. They're not touching the board. They're not in a random spot. They're in the general area that I want them. If your ends show up sideways, you have to place them and then turn them. And that would happen because when you created your ends, you created them on the wrong axis. And if you create them on the, if you create all your parts on the same axis, then when you place them, they all place in relationship to each other correctly. But if you place them, if you originally build them one on a different axis, it's going to show up sideways. And this happens sometimes with your board if you do that incorrectly, or if you do your ends incorrectly, they'll sometimes show up sideways. And so you have to change them back and forth. So now I'm going to go back to place, and I'm going to start placing my pegs. So there's my round peg, which I'm going to place, generally speaking, somewhere near where the hole for the round peg is. Then I'm going to place my square peg, and it's going right there, kind of close. Right click OK. And now I'm going to place my triangle peg or my tri-peg and place in the center, right click OK, because I only need one of each. Now I'm going to show you another trick that might make this a little easier to do. I'm going to click just a standard left click on one end, hold down the shift key on the keyboard, standard left click on the other end. I'm going to come up here to default, and I'm going to change what they look like. And you don't have to do this at this point, but it actually helps when you're doing your assembly if your ends are kind of see-through. So I'm going to select clear blue. I can change it later to make it look more like a regular pegboard toy, but what I want is basically those ends, I need to be able to see into them a little bit. So I'm going to make them clear right now. So now I have everything placed. My board is locked down so it can't move. So my very next step, I have everything placed, which takes me through the first part of step 4. It says now attach the ends to the board, offset a mate so the board sticks into the end by 0.375 of an inch. So basically I want the board itself to fit inside the end, not butt up against it, but actually be inside of it slightly. So I'm going to click on constrain on the ribbon, and that's my mate. If I leave my mouse over it long enough, it shows up and says that's a mate. This one's a flush. Flush is when you line things up so they match up. A mate is when they're stuck together. So mates are like glue, flushes are like lining them up. So I'm going to mate and you can see that I'm just going to click on the side I want to mate on that end, and I'm actually going to grab my view cube and turn the entire view cube. And now I'm going to mate it to that end. But remember, the directions say there needs to be an offset of 0.375. So in order to see that, now notice I haven't hit enter yet. See how it moves it 0.375 of an inch off, so that it's pushing it that way. Well, I want to push into the end, so I'm actually going to turn this into a negative number because that's going to make it go the other direction. That's what I want right there. And there you can see it, that the board is actually slightly into the end by 0.375. That's right. So I hit apply, and now I'm going to go do the other side. And you'll notice, yeah, I get that they're still not lined up all the way. That's okay. I'm going to do both my mates first and make sure that's done, and then I'm going to line them up. So again, that's 0.375. Except again, I'm going to come look at the front view, and it's pushing it out. So again, I have to make that a negative number to make it slide in. You're going to say that doesn't look right. I know, but all we're doing right now is how far into those they go. So now, the very next step of this same step says center the ends so that they are flush at 2.625 inches up from the top of the board. So the reason I came up with that number is pretty basic. The ends are 6 inches long. So I took 6 inches, divided it in half, that's 3 inches. The board itself is it's 3/4 of an inch fat. So you subtract the 3/4 of an inch out of the 6 inches, and then you center it that way, so it becomes 5 1/4 inches. Half of 5 1/4 inches is 2.625, which is the same thing as basically just 2 1/8 inches or something. The point being is that you can do that with math. I've already done it for you because I know that that is one of those things that we struggle with. So I'm now going to click on flush in my constraint window, and I'm going to click the top of one end and the top of the board. Lines it up flush. Well, I don't want it flush. I want it to point, and I'm looking at my direction, 625. And notice it slid it down. So I look at my front, it says, okay, now that's going to be stuck there. That's not what I wanted. I want half of it up and half of it down, so I need that number to be negative, and now I get what I want. So I'm going to apply that. And I'm still on the flush, and I'm going to do the other end. Board, top, turn to the front, and I'm going to type it in, 2.625. And in that case, notice it brought it up. If I were to make this one negative, notice that's when it slides it all the way down. So I don't want this side to be negative. I always type my numbers in first and see what it does, and if it's not what I want, then I try putting it in as a negative number. And that usually helps with your flushes. So I'm going to hit apply, come back to my home view so I can see everything really well. Notice this is still not lined up with that, which it needs to be. So I'm going to flush this to that, apply, and now I'm going to flush the end to the front and apply, and now I'm going to close this and watch. Both my ends are stuck to my board and nothing is moving because remember the board is grounded, which means now that things are locked into the board, those ends are locked into that board, so they can't move either because the board can't move. That's exactly what I want. So I look at my next bullet point, which says use one mate to stick the round peg into the round hole. So I'm going to go to constraint, and there's mate. Notice if I leave my mouse over it, it shows up, and we'll say mate if I leave it over, sitting over the top of it. There it is, mate. Notice I'm going to click when the red line goes all the way through the center of my peg. And the reason I do that is if I just do an end, it's just going to mate the end. I also want to mate the hole where that round the round hole where that red line shows up through the center. Hit apply. I'm going to close the window and watch. My round peg can move up and down, but it cannot move side to side. It can only go up and down. That's what I want. Okay, so then I go to the next step. It says use 2 mates each to stick the square peg and the triangular peg into their holes. All the pegs should slide up and down, but not side to side. So I'm going to go back to constrain. Again, I want the mate tool. The triangle peg is tricky. I'm not going to lie to you. It's tricky because if you didn't make your triangle exactly perfect, where that point of your triangle is at exactly a half inch, and the hole is at exactly a half inch inside that square hole, then it won't fit, which means you can't mate it. And it won't let you because nothing lines up. So if you're having massive problems getting your triangle peg to mate into your triangle hole, you might want to try just remaking either your triangle peg, toss out the one you have and do it again, or go back to your board and double check the dimensions of that triangle hole, because I would bet that's where your problem is. So I'm going to click one flat side of my triangle, and notice that flat side of the triangle has to fit right up against this flat side of the inside. Click. Apply, and I'm going to close the constraint window because I need to move this. And it still moves, but I have to pull it off so I can actually see what I'm doing. So I'm going to zoom in a little so you can see better. I'm going to mate again. Flat side has to touch this flat side. Apply, close, go back to home view, and now I can slide it up and down, but I cannot slide it side to side, so it's incorrect. That's how you can always tell if it's right. So I'm kind of on the front, but I've tilted it a little bit so I can see better. I'm going to zoom in again, just a smidge. We're going to constrain mate front of my square peg. I'm turning the entire thing over to front of the hole and hit apply and close it, because you're going to see it's not lined up on the sides, but I have to move my square peg over to be able to see this side of the board. So I'm now going to grab my view cube and turn that back, constrain, zoom in, that flat side of the square peg, turn the whole thing to the flat side of the inside of the hole. Hit apply, close that, come back out, and now that moves up and down, but not side to side. So all my stuff is in the right place. So the one thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to go change some colors, because pegboard toys tend to be very cutesy. They're for little kids, so you want basic primary colors. So my two ends, again, click, shift, click, and I had already set them at clear blue, but now instead of clear blue, I'm just going to make them a solid blue. My pegboard itself is red, and you'll notice it's having a hard time because that red and that blue are lined up together, so they're equal. That's okay. For our purposes, that's exactly what we want. Now I'm going to select a color for my round peg, and I'm going to choose something like canary, so yellow. My triangle peg, I'm going to click, and I'm going to select some other color. I don't really want it to be that. Magenta is a lot like red, so I'm going to move on. Orange would be good, but I happen to know that that orange is not the best orange. Let's try this one. That one's not half bad, so we'll leave it. And I'm thinking I'm going to do a green on here. But notice all of these are in alphabetical order, so if you want a dark green, you have to go to the D's. And I take it back, I don't like that orange, so I'm going to go back and select it and go to maybe L for a light orange. Light gray, light steel. Nope, I don't have a light orange. Maybe just plain orange. Well, that's better. It's a little lighter. Either way, now when I look at the front view, that's what I see. There's my board, my end, all three of my pegs, and the whole thing is locked in place. So that is the pegboard assembly, and now I am done with it.